Good day, everybody. It is Calxiyn here, and if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe for more Attack on Titan videos. Today we are going to be doing our reaction and discussion. If you guys have never been here before, don't know how these work, we react to the biggest moments, the coolest moments, all that stuff, and then after that we do a discussion where we talk about the entire episode. But if you guys want to see my full reaction, it will be up on Patreon with timer and subtitles. So basically what you would do is that if you go onto the Patreon, you can sync it up on your end. You can press play when I press play, and then you can see my full reaction. But let's just get into it. Oh, she's so full of shit. Oh, Gabi's faking. They're just trying to get out of there. Oh, boy. Yee! Yikes. Oh, man, they just conked that guy out. Is that how you say it? You conked him out? I don't... Uh-oh. Yee! Okay, listen. Y'all don't need... Oh, it's a brick. Oh, my God. Y'all didn't need to kill him. Oh, no. That's not good. Oh, boy. Yeah, that guy was worried and you killed him, bro. Oh, no. Oh, is that Sasha's sister? Uh-oh. Oh, they did it maybe to help Eren. Maybe Floch isn't a good replacement then. Yeah. Oh, so Floch is on Eren's side. I'm liking Floch. I don't hate Floch anymore. Like, you guys have been all like, I hate Floch. Like, I don't think you're in charge anymore, Hange. Like, I see those guys whispering with each other. Oh, is this why people don't like Floch? Because Floch killed Hange? Oh, no! This is not good. Come on. Give her a second chance at least. Like, huh? What? Oh, God, Gabi! They don't know about stuff like that! Oh, God. This is bad. Oh, Gabi. Oh, wait! Oh! See, she already knows! Oh! She's not as dumb as you think. Uh-oh! And Gabi's like, okay, time for us to kill her. Oh no, Gabi! You can't do that! No, boy, what's wrong with you? Uh-oh! See, she covered for her too, so why? Yeah, see? It's like, she didn't do anything. Like, how can you blame them for what happened? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I like this conversation. This is really, really good. Oh, see, Gabi's trying to figure out how to justify it, but she can't. This is interesting. See, she doesn't know. And that's the answer. It is crazy. I think Gabi's gonna change, guys. I actually do think that she's gonna change. Oh, see, she doesn't blame him either. Here's where we get into the Sasha. Guys. Yeah. Oh, no. Oh. Now it's up to you guys, though. Do you guys want to be traitors, or do you guys want to be, you know what I mean? Do you guys want to fight for Marley, or will you fight for them? Wow. But where do you guys all stand? Oh, yeah, let's go, Colt! And they're the only ones. They're the only ones left. What if they all want to go? Like, and maybe while they're there, they'll also defect. They're trying to push it so it's not during the global alliance. They want to go now. I don't know. I think they're gonna switch. Ooh, I like it. All right, everybody, let us get into the discussion now. Now, I'm really excited to talk about this episode. I have some theories. I have some analysis, obviously. That's why you guys are here. But I think that it's really good how the central themes of the entire season have really popped out in this one. I think that Gabi's character arc is going into a really interesting direction, because at first I was like, oh, like she can't be redeemed or she won't defect. Then I was like, maybe she will defect, and then when she killed Sasha, I was like, she will not defect. But now I'm sort of like if the brainwashing in her can be broken, it would be really interesting to see who she roots for after that, right? Because I feel like between her and Falco, Falco was always the sort of more reasonable one. Like, he was the one where this entire time I was like, Falco's gonna defect. Falco and Reiner, like, they're gonna side with each other, they're gonna side with Zeke, and then, you know, everything's gonna be great. But I feel like that Gabi is that sort of like wild card where she could go towards that direction. Like, I feel like she's on that tightrope right now, and I feel like what's going to really sway her is if she actually gets to talk to Zeke, or if the people from Marley, like Pieck and Porco, come to save her. In terms of theorizing, we will talk about it more when it actually happened in this episode, but I think what'll be really interesting is last week, we talked about Gabi and Falco interacting with Sasha's sister, which turned out to actually happen. But now, I'm sort of wondering about their interactions with Niccolo, because the big thing at the end of this episode is, oh, we're going over to this Marleyan's house for dinner, like, hey, like, maybe you guys can figure out how to get back home. So it doesn't seem like, at least I don't think, that Sasha's sister or family thinks that they are the kids that killed Sasha. I don't even think they know the exact circumstance to know that they were warrior cadets that would be children that killed Sasha, if that makes sense. But you know who does know that? Niccolo. And so I feel like that if they're like, hey, Niccolo, like, can you help us, bro? Like, we're the warrior cadets. He's gonna be like, what? Right? And so I feel like they could actually be in more danger than they realize with that. I feel like there's a big chance that there could be this giant blowout where they try to talk to Niccolo, but then maybe Sasha's family, like, maybe they've clued in, right? So let's say they all go over for dinner, and Sasha's family is like, hey, like, I know this sounds crazy, but these two are Marleyans, right? Because at least the sister knows. I don't know about the parents, but maybe they would all get clued in or whatever, right? And then Niccolo would just be, like, staring at them, like, in horror, because they have been, I guess, like, I don't know what to call it, but they have been basically helping. They've been abetting, they've been feeding and clothing and housing the children that killed their daughter. And so I feel like there's gonna be this big, like, blowout scene of some kind where either, like, Niccolo is talking to them both privately, and then it all gets revealed, and Sasha's sister and the family are like, what the fuck? Or it starts off that way where, yeah, we met these very nice Marleyan children in the woods, and Niccolo just, like, sits there in, like, disbelief about how the fuck this could happen, right? So it could go either way. I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's just the sister that knows, or if it's the whole family that knows that they are Marleyan. All that aside, I think that the seizure scene was really good. It does show how far they're willing to go, obviously, but I do wonder, like, how they got out of the rest of this place. But I really feel bad for this guy. Also, the animation, I don't know if it was just me, but does it look like to anyone else that the animation animation really stepped up this episode, and I'm gonna pick some specific like scenes, but yeah, like this whole thing with hitting him in the head, like, oh my god, it was just so like they just needed to knock him out once. But I think that this really shows, right, like Gabi versus Falco. Like Falco's like, okay, we can lie and knock him out once, right? Like, you know, so we won't die. So he's more of that like morally gray type of thing. Like, it's not nice to knock people out, but you know, that's better than killing them. But Gabi just goes full murder on this man. I'm pretty sure that this man is dead, right? And so when you think about it, does this not remind you of other situations with Eren to some extent? Like, especially like when Eren was like younger, I guess, and more like rabid a little bit, right? I don't know, that's just what it reminded me of, like scenes where they're just wailing, right? And so yeah, I don't know, that's what it made me think of. I think that there's a lot of parallels to be made between Gabi and Eren. I'm not gonna specifically use the example of him helping like kill Mikasa's like almost kidnappers, because I feel like the kidnappers probably deserved it, but you guys understand what I mean, right? Like just all of her pent up like rage and how far that she's willing to go versus Falco. I think that that was really interesting. I like the reveal of the brick, but yeah, rip that guy. He was just doing his job, and I think that Falco says something that's really key over here, right? Like he says that that guy, like he was just worried about you and you killed him, right? And so, you know, like there are times where Gabi seems really unredeemable, especially when she does things like that, but at the same time, this is basically like still in her brainwashing mode, whereas I feel like midway through the episode when she's talking to Sasha's sister, something in her is starting to crack and break a little bit. I can't even trust Zeke anymore, or anyone else. I feel like that was a really good line, especially because they are still children, and I feel like that ultimately at the end of the day, all of their parental figures have failed them in a sense. Like Zeke was, you know, this idol for them. I think that Reiner is more of the brother-father figure, but I think that to some extent Zeke is almost like elevated like one step above that. Like he's like their idol in a sense, and he betrayed them, right? And so I feel like that they must feel like really lost and confused about that the adults in their life had betrayed them in this way. And she mentioned Zeke like multiple times during the episode, so I wonder what the fallout is gonna be with that, especially because we never saw the resolution to what happened with the people that were drinking the wine yet. At least we didn't see that in this episode, right? Like last week I had the theory that they would either just be poisoned to death or that they would turn into titans and that Zeke would transform for some reason. But the only thing that I don't quite understand is why Zeke would transform against Levi, I guess, like why he would do that, like unless it's for shits and giggles in a rematch. Like it doesn't seem to necessarily fit in with the plan. Like I know that for most of Paradis, right, like they seem to be, or at least the military, right, the military is against Zeke, right? And so maybe this could be like Zeke's little plan to escape, and I think that Eren's going to escape too, but like ultimately, like the important people, which seem to be like Eren, Historia, like Eren has his own little group going, there's also the townspeople, I guess, or like the people of the kingdom, they all seem to be siding with Eren, so I don't know why Zeke would sabotage himself in some way to turn himself into a titan and try to like fight Levi or something. And so I'm wondering a little bit about that whole thing. Like that to me hasn't made entire sense yet. Like I get it, like a lot of people are still against Eren, and so maybe it's like, oh well, you know, Zeke's gonna turn all of these military people into titans, he's gonna like fight in the woods and stuff, but like he would just transform back, right? Like what's his goal, to kill Levi in that situation? Like I don't know, it seems like kind of a weird little thing that they're doing that I don't quite get it yet. I think that instead of it being for Zeke's purposes, it may have been more to get rid of those guys because they were like shit talking Historia, and at this point I kind of feel like Historia's in on everything. Like I feel like that Eren told her what's up and she went along with his plan, right? And then Eren went away, and so I don't know, it's kind of interesting to think about like what's going on in the forest, and also like is that forest anywhere near this forest is basically what I was trying to get at here. It's kind of late for me, guys. I'm recording this at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with me, but yeah. So sorry if I'm like losing my train of thought, I guess, but like she's like, oh, we're out in the sticks, like we're out in the boonies or whatever, right? Like we're out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, I don't know, but yeah. And so when you think about that, like, is Zeke around there somewhere? Because I think that Levi's whole thing was, oh, if Zeke tries to pull something sketchy, we'll be in the middle of the forest, but they're also in the middle of a forest, and so I'm just like, right, I'm thinking about that a little bit. There's not much to say about this scene with Reiner. I did appreciate the shirtless Reiner memes that I'm sure, or just pictures in general that'll come from this, but I didn't want to post them on, you know, in the video on YouTube. I didn't know if that was a little too, you know, like risque or whatever for the YouTube video, but yeah, I really liked this scene just because it establishes like, hey, everyone's okay, kind of, except Porco's drinking, Pieck looks lifeless. Like, I'm glad that Pieck is alive because I was genuinely worried that she was dead, was a little bit worried about Porco, but yeah, it seems like that she's made somewhat of a recovery, like she's much better than when we last saw her. How I wish this was all a dream. Yep, what a big mood. And I wonder if this whole like dreaming thing, I know this is such a stretch, but it reminds me when Falco was having that dream in the very first episode, right? Like, I wonder if this is all like somehow connected. Like, Reiner was actually having a dream, because he says something like that he heard their voices, like, I heard Gabi and Falco's voices, like, obviously, he could mean, like, before, like, his last memory, I don't know how to explain it, the last thing he remembers is hearing their voices and transforming, but what if it's also a double meaning that, like, he can almost hear them, even though he's not actually there, like, even though he's not there in Paradis, he can hear them somehow, you know what I mean? So this scene was fucking beautiful. Like, I don't understand, like, well, I don't understand, like, if it's just me or if, like, the animation genuinely got really, really, like, high quality, but it looks great. Like, it looks different, right? Like, the water was rippling and, like, the trees look so nice. Like, it just looked so much more high quality than usual to me. I like this conversation between them because I think that it sort of parallels to Gabi's aunt, which is Reiner's mom, and how she kept the armband on even though she was inside, because I think that Gabi is parroting a lot of that rhetoric here, and this is what I mean by, like, the themes of the show are really popping out, right? Because I think that the whole thing with Gabi is sort of the same thing with the mom. Like, for the mom, the armband was like a giant part of her identity because she was brainwashed into thinking that her value was like being this good Eldian, or that was like her only identity and stuff. So she even wore it indoors when they didn't have to. And I feel like in this case, with Gabi not wanting to take it off, it's a very similar thing where she wants to keep it on because, like, that's like her clinging to this identity, to this manufactured identity that turns people against one another, is, oh, I am the good and they are the bad, right? Like, she wants to hold on to that so much because I feel like that that's what she's based her whole ideology, her whole personality to some extent around, right? Like, being one of the good ones, like a lot like her mom. And so I feel like, or I guess not her mom, but Reiner's mom and then her aunt. But I feel like that this scene establishes the fact, like, with Falco, like, Falco's like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy talk, right? Because it is. And the mom and the mom dash aunt, right? Like, basically said the exact same stuff. She just didn't say it with as many words, right? But you see how the brainwashing has really affected Gabi in this way, that this is like something that is like such a big part of her identity. She can't bear to part with it because, well, she says why, right? Like, she says, like, if I take it off, how would you distinguish me? And I feel like that's the first clue about you're not any different, honey. Like, this is all just a manufactured system to make people turn against each other like this in a way. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec when we get there, but again, there's reference of Zeke again. I just want to get answers from Zeke before I'm caught and killed. So again, Gabi has also resigned herself to death, which I think is, again, more of that mentality of being trained for this specific purpose, of basically being a child soldier. Like, she is, like, basically has accepted being expendable at this point. And she did that, right, when she was going up on the blimp, like with Falco. She was like, yeah, like, I'm basically going on a suicide mission, right? But even still now, like, she still hasn't changed her mind, because I feel like that in a way, she has been reduced to, like, this being her identity. If she can, like, die for the cause, like, that's, like, her value as a person, and maybe even, like, that's the value that she has, like, for her family and stuff. And so I feel like that there's some really interesting points going on about identity and how this brainwashing manufactures these identities that people like so desperately want to cling on to, and they don't want to let them go because it would like break the entire like system that they built up in their heads. And I feel like at the same time, like it's also how Marley has been able to control these people, because I feel like that to some extent, like people inherently desire like, oh, we want to be good, we want to be the best, right? And so if you put in this system like, oh, well, we're the good Eldians, right? We're the best Eldians because we give our lives to do this, we're honorary like Marleyans, we do that, right? And so I feel like that this whole system for them has really like brainwashed them to this point where they think that sacrificing their lives is like the best thing they can do, and they want to be the best. They don't want to be, you know, like these other Eldians, right? And so I feel like that's something that really goes on in this scene. And I like how Falco, he wants to trash it, right? And I feel like that's very telling of Falco's whole mindset, right? Is that he doesn't necessarily feel the same connection to it that Gabi does. Gabi is like her aunt who wears the armband even when she's indoors, whereas Falco is like Reiner and like most of the other Eldians that take it off when they're inside. So I feel like that almost it's a metaphor. It's like, why wear it now? We're inside, in a sense. Like they are amongst other Eldians instead of being out with the Marleyans. And so I feel like there's that sort of layered thing, but I love how she just pins him. And again, the animation. Like, okay, so I didn't wear my glasses for the reaction, but I'm wearing my glasses now and I'm just like, bro, like, have I just been blind for the past 2 weeks? Like, has it uploaded in like a weird quality? Like, did I suddenly just get, like, have I not been watching in 1080p? Like, the animation has changed. You can't tell me otherwise, right? And so here's the crux of what I was saying. I'm a good Eldian. Without that, I'm the same as the Island Devils. And it's like, but honey, right? You're almost there. You are the same. Like, that's what we all need to learn. What are you saying? You're acting crazy, right? And so I think that that was good. Like, it's good for him to say that to her because she is acting crazy, right? And so that's, like, I don't want to get into all of this because I feel like that this is a big thing, but I've seen people jump to the sort of conclusion online about like, oh, like this is promoting like fascist ideology, but really I feel like that it's denouncing fascist ideology. Like the whole point of the show to me, which I can't understand how people misinterpret this personally, but it's about taking down your oppressors. Like in the oppressor in this case, like is Marley, and there's also oppressive systems within Paradis, but you guys understand what I'm saying? Like it's about like fighting against, it's about the little guy or the oppressed fighting against the oppressor. And so I don't understand how people think it's the reverse. And just because Gabi is spouting this doesn't mean that it's right or it's true. And I feel like that when you have characters like Falco denouncing it, that is even more apparent, right? Like he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're crazy, right? And so I feel like that again, that's another like, guys, like the show's not condoning it. They are actually openly saying that this ideology is crazy, right? And so I feel like that that's sort of important when you consider like how do the characters talk to each other, how do the characters react when that sort of like brainwashing is spouted. It's not supposed to be like, yes, I totally agree with Gabi, I too will be brainwashed, right? It's, you're supposed to look at Gabi and be like, sis, like no, and you're supposed to look at the Marleyans and see them like for what they truly are and be like, no, right? And so I feel like that Falco functions really well in that way to sort of call the characters out on that, and that happens a bit more in this episode as well. But I really like just, oh my god, why is everything so beautiful? Yeah, and I really like this, you didn't have to die too, right? And so I feel like that she still cares about Falco though, that he didn't need to come with her. And see, I really like this because I like the you didn't have to die too for a couple reasons, right? She still cares about Falco, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, when you really think about it, right, like she has resigned herself to death so much, like she is so certain that she thinks that they are gonna die, that she also thinks he's gonna die, right? So I feel like that's also an interesting point, that she truly does think that they are both gonna die, and I feel like that impacts a lot of their interactions and why she may be so willing to just kill random people, right? It's because she already thinks that she's gonna die anyway, and so she just wants to live long enough to get those answers from Zeke. But again, it's nice that Falco is around to reel her in, like, hey, you didn't need to kill that guard, like he was just worried about you. You do not need to kill Sasha's sister, right? And so I feel like that Falco is really her self-control at this point, but we understand Gabi's mindset is that she is basically on one month-long suicide mission, and she thinks that Falco is along the way with her. And so I feel like she's like, my actions won't have any consequences because either way I'm gonna die, which is like not a nice way to think. And again, we have more like Gabi ready to murder this girl, and Falco's like looking at her like no more murder, not nice. But then I really like how she says, are you guys hungry? I live nearby, so follow me. And at this point, I think this is when she knew that they were Marleyans, because I think that she was listening, and you actually see a POV shot earlier. Let me see if I can find it. I may have not screenshotted it, but you see like the shot of that. Yeah, somebody's like lurking in the forest, right? And so I feel like that she got a lot of this conversation, and I think she knew right here that they were from Marley. This shot, again, it's just so nice. Like, it's just so beautiful. And so I wonder if this was done on purpose somehow, like they were trying to make like these scenes intentionally more beautiful, I guess, whereas maybe like with Eren and Mikasa, the world is like darker or something. Like, I don't know. But like, look at the horsies, and then like look at the dogs. I'm trying to get over here. Look at the dogs. They're so cute. And like, this is just so beautiful. And so I wonder if it's like, oh, we're out in the ethereal countryside thing. Like, it's maybe more beautiful on purpose because this is like their safe haven for a little bit. I wonder if that could be it. I love this. Let's take the horse and run. What the fuck are you talking about, Gabi? You can't ride a horse. I feel like that Falco is basically 100% of her impulse control because she's just not thinking straight. She's like, yeah, let's steal a horse. But then we find out later that she can't ride a horse. And so I'm like, sis, what was the plan? And again, like, I'm not being hard on them, like, in a serious way. Like, I think that the thing that a lot of people miss with Gabi and Falco is that they are just kids. And so there becomes a point, right, where you can't necessarily hold them at the same level of cognitive responsibility that you would an adult, right? They are literally brainwashed child soldiers. And so there comes a point where I'm just like, I'm poking fun at her because I think it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like, I don't hate Gabi for anything that she's done because I understand that she has been brainwashed in this way, and it's not really her fault if, like, there was basically nothing else taught to her yet, right? If she learned all this and then decided not to change, that's different, but it seems like upon learning, like upon being exposed to this new information and this new perspective, that she may change as a person. And so I feel like that that's the key. I think that that's the key with all characters. If a character learns new information and then stays on the wrong side, I think that's one thing. But if a character learns new information and then switches sides, I think that that is like redemption, if that makes sense. Like, that is what makes someone a good or bad person. It's when they're introduced to another perspective, right? And then they basically like change their old ways. Like, they change their whole habits once they figure out that whatever they were raised with, like, their perspective is wrong. And you can look at like characters like Zuko, for example, right? Like, Zuko had this like ideology and this perspective for like most of like Avatar, and then like he changes. Why? Because in a sense, like, he was provided with new information or new insight, right, about life and about like what like his father truly was. Like, you could like argue it's a whole bunch of things, right? And then he changes, right? And so I feel like that's a difference between like a good person character, like not a good character, because you can be a good character and a bad person, right? But a good person character and a bad person character. And I don't think that Gabi is without hope yet. I don't think that she is a bad person character. I feel like that she is a brainwashed person character, right? And so now it's up to her, now knowing this, what will she do? And still, like, I guess, like, she's still a kid, so it's hard to be like, okay, Gabi, like, it's time to make the choice. It's time to make the choice right now. Like, it's still hard when you think about it that way, but you guys understand what I mean. It's like, I think that Gabi still has the potential to change. It will just be up to her whether or not she wants to change later, and I feel like that's a whole thing. So Falco and Gabi pick up on the whole Southern Marleyan accent thing, and I think that what's happening here is that obviously, like, when the walls were created and like all of like the people like went inside of the walls, I'm sure that there were some people from Southern Marley, and so what happened was is that the accent persisted over time. That's how I would interpret that, and they pick up on on that. And so it again reminds them, right, that the Eldians that are within the wall are not necessarily so different from the Eldians that are outside of it. I really like all the kids' facial expressions right here. They're just all so surprised. And I think it's because Falco is so, like, frantic, but also polite. Like, I think that that's part of it, right? Like, they both bow and stuff, and I think that, like, for them, that's not really a thing. And I think that, like, they're supposed to be more, like, Southern accent type thing. Like, that's how I read them, right? And so maybe not, like, so proper, like, you youngins don't need to be bowing like that. Like, you know what I mean? Very bad Southern accent on my part, but you guys know what I'm saying, right? Like, I feel like that for them, like, obviously, like, this is very formal. Again, they're, you know, soldiers, right? And so, like, very formal, very, like, polite, like, we'll work, we'll do whatever you ask, right? Like, very, like, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but they are basically, like, this is their soldier mode, if that makes sense. Like, sir, we will do whatever you want, right? And he's just like, what do I do with that? Like, he's not a very soldier type man, right? So let's talk about Gabi slapping the mom. I guess Sasha's mom is what we'll call her. I think there's a lot to unpack here. Like, you have her doing it in the first place. I think it is that idea of, I can't let this filthy Paradis Eldian touch me. Like, I think that that's it. Then Falco starts, like, panicking. All of the kids look in shock, right? Like, they're both shocked. And so I think that the idea here is, though, is that, like, Gabi, they think that Gabi has been abused in some way, and so that's why she reacted like that to touch, like, she's very flinchy. And, like, in a sense, I think that she has been, right? Like, maybe not in the traditional way that people necessarily think of, but I think to some extent, like, Falco and Gabi are definitely, like, victims, right? And so I think that, like, that's, like, a very interesting, like, thing here is, like, you know, like, they're like, oh, like, you know, that lass is, right? I'm assuming they mean, like, she's, you know, frightened, they ran away from home, and so their assumption, like, not knowing that they're from Marley, per se, right, would be like, oh, they had an abusive home life and they ran away, whereas, like, I think that it's almost like a double meaning, like, no, she didn't, not here, but also she has, in some respects. Like, when you think about all that she's gone through and all the war that she's experienced, right, it sort of reminds me of when we see those soldiers that all have the PTSD, like when Eren is blending in among them, like that's what it sort of reminds me like of. Like, Gabi doesn't necessarily, like, she wasn't necessarily domestically abused, right? She wasn't abused by a parent per se, but, like, we think about, like, the whole, like, military system. Like, I think that they are both victims in that way. And so I think here, it's more that they're just worried that Falco is putting on a brave face, right? Like, I feel like at first I thought they were mad at them, but now I'm seeing this more as, like, pity. I think they're just deeply worried about both of them, especially because Falco's just trying to be like, yeah, so good, because he's trying to act normal, but he doesn't realize that that's actually, like, tipping them off to that something is wrong, right? For Gabi to be feeling this way, but for him to try and put on a brave face, I feel like they are just sorry for them. They're worried that, like, what have these kids gone through that they are, like, acting this way, and, like, Falco's putting on this front, whereas Gabi is clearly very scared, right? And so I feel like there's a lot to unpack in that scene, right? And then she, like, takes the bite. And so I feel like that the food, like, I feel like food in Attack on Titan are specifically connected with Sasha. I don't know about, like, other characters. I don't necessarily remember, but obviously, like, Sasha is sort of present in here when you think about it. Like, I think that the whole thing with food is how, like, food, like, changes. Like, it makes a change in the character arc. I don't know how to explain that any better, but, like, think about Niccolo and think about, like, Sasha eating his lobster. Like, I feel like that, in a sense, like, this is the point where Gabi's character will change slightly. Like, it's the food. I don't know how to explain that any better, but, like, how Sasha and Niccolo, despite being, like, Eldian and Marleyan, like, I think Niccolo kind of loved her, like, let's be honest, right? But sort of became friends, right? Like, I feel like food is, like, the gateway to change and the gateway to, like, being able to understand each other. Like, I just think, like, it's a whole, like, there's a metaphor, like, there's a whole metaphor about the food. So in this scene, the people from Haizuru are there, and basically they're like, hey, congratulations for what y'all did to Marley, right? And then the guy's like, ah, yeah, world's most dangerous island, am I right? And then she says, but this time our goal is to witness said danger in person, right? And so they have an observation craft. So I'm assuming that what they're doing is that they have a flying boat, which I'm like, is that just not a seaplane? Like, that confused me a little bit, right? It's using the material that I think that they mined off the island. Like, I think that that was the island material that Zeke was telling her about in that episode, last episode, I think. The water looked beautiful. Like, I know you guys are gonna be so sick of me, but why does everything look so fucking good this episode? I don't even know, right? And so I feel like that this boat's probably gonna be important, because what I'm assuming, right, is that they fly this seaplane into the air to watch the rumbling, so they aren't on the ground when, like, the Titan goes boom, right? Basically, and they can be, like, safe up in the sky, because obviously the Titan is going to rampage the land, like, whatever is let loose, right? So I feel like that they're just gonna watch from the safety of the skies. I feel like that that's the idea with that. So this was fun. If I was doing like an Attack on Titan out of context thing, like you guys have seen those on Twitter, where they'll just post like pictures that sort of represented the episode, I would put the Newsies. Like, I would put the voice from the Newsies, because that's how I feel right now, right? So somebody's leaked to the press, right? And so I think that this is good, because like we see this guy was in like season 3 and stuff, I'm pretty sure, or was it season 2? Anyway, he existed. I know him. I don't remember him exactly, but he was like the son of that guy, and it was like a whole thing, right? And so, you know, oh, they're evacuating this district, so I'm assuming that maybe they could be preparing like for the rumbling. Like, what if they're evacuating that place because the Titan's gonna pop out of there? Like, maybe that's the whole thing with that, right? And I think, yeah, that's his company was in charge of rebuilding it, but now they're like, may get broken again, you know? Like, it really just be like that sometimes. And then they're like, ask the MPs, right? And so I feel like, and there's something in this episode that's kind of interesting about that, like you see these people whispering as Floch and them are getting interrogated, and so I sort of wonder if the MPs are actually on Aaron's side, even though Hange is like trying to go against Aaron, and so maybe that's why they're evacuating the district as well. Like, I feel like that they are going to test the rumbling, and so I feel like that something else points to that when she's talking to Floch, and I think it's that she's like, yeah, I kind of set us down this path, and so I feel like that she's doing it anyway. Like, she is doing the rumbling, she will let out Aaron, but the thing is that like, I'm still not going to tolerate any disrespect, Floch, right? So I feel like that she, I think, has just resigned herself to the plan, and they are going to do a rumbling test, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But you see, like, the people think that Aaron is the path to the future, and so I feel like that that's interesting, right? And then this guy says something about, like, you know, taxpayers, right? If that's true, all Eldians should have a voice in how Aaron is handled, right? And so we have this guy in the taxpayer thing, right? And so I feel like that's really interesting, because you have this thing where it's like, okay, well, Floch is supporting Aaron, and then those, like, the people that are with him, I guess, the new recruits, and then you have the people, like, the people of the kingdom, I guess, right? Like, they seem to also be supporting Aaron, and so really it seems to be the minority of Hange, and then Connie, Sasha, Jean, and Armin, and did I say Sasha? Sasha's dead. Mikasa. Anyway, you guys understand what I'm saying. Like I said, kind of late here. You guys know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's almost like that Aaron has more support than I originally thought. Like, it's Aaron against his friends, but it's not Aaron against the world quite yet. Like, it seems like that the majority of people around actually do support Aaron. It's just Hange, and then it's just like Mikasa and Armin and them. I like this. So look me in the eyes and tell me I can trust you, right? And so she does look at him, but there's that little anime shine. And so I feel like that has really been like representative of characters lying or being ashamed or telling the truth. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the reflection off the glasses does mean a lot. What does my reflection mean? Guys, I have my glasses on today. No. And so what I'm thinking about is that it's not entirely clear, and so she does look him in the eye, but at the same time, there's a little bit that's obscured, and so I feel like it's like, woo, it's a metaphor. It's like, oh god, what am I watching right now? Promise Neverland? Like, some of the characters, like, one is entirely in darkness, the other's like a quarter light, quarter darkness, one of them's mostly light, and I was like, guys, it's a metaphor for how they all stand ideologically, right? I feel like the glasses, it's almost that same thing, where like, it's mostly clear, but then there's a little obscure obscured part. So it's like, we don't know. Like, maybe Hange doesn't entirely know if this is the best thing, or maybe she's not entirely being honest. Maybe she's not being honest with herself, right? Because I don't think that they believe her. Like, it doesn't look like that he's reassured or anything, right? So I feel like that, you know, he was like, look me in the eye and tell me this, and she was just like, okay, I'll try, but I don't think so, right? I don't know, like, it just came off sort of that way. Like, she's like, this is for the sake of all the Eldian people. They don't seem very convinced by that, and so I feel like she doesn't even know what the right choice is. So going into this episode, I initially thought that Floch was going to be chosen as the Eren replacement, because they had this whole thing of, oh, we gotta pick someone we trust to replace Eren, but not somebody that we value so much, right? And so I feel like that Floch has kind of got out of the window now, because he seems to be supporting Eren, and so I feel like for Mikasa, Armin, and them's purposes, that doesn't really work anymore. So I am interested to see like who they'll be thinking about by the end to replace Eren. I mean, I feel like that the end game is, and we've talked about this before, I feel like the end game is for Falco to get the Attack Titan powers, or at least Eren's powers anyway, like all of them, right? All of the powers that Eren has collected, right? That Eren has pokeballed over the past, like, I don't know, like the past like 4 seasons, right? And so when you think about it that way, it's like, okay, well, how do we get there though? How would Mikasa and Armin pick Falco, right? Like, Falco would eventually, like, he would have to change sides, or he would have to align themselves with them in some way, and how would they be able to trust Falco? Like, there's just so many questions, so I feel like that they wouldn't pick Falco. It's like, they didn't pick Falco, Falco picked us. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't pick Falco to get the powers picked Falco. That's how I sort of see that, because as of right now, I don't understand how Falco would be chosen by Mikasa and Armin to be the backup Eren. But I feel like, okay, so I have like another theory about like the end game for all this, and it kind of has something to do with Annie, and I know that this is kind of like, like, I don't know how this would work exactly, but I was sort of thinking about like the Warhammer thing and like the crystal, and so like if Eren theoretically got all of the Titan powers, like including Jaw, and like locked himself inside of that crystal, like would it be possible that it would never be able to be open? Like, at least until technology caught up to like the idea of cracking it open. You know what I mean? Because the whole thing with the Warhammer Titan is that nothing could break it except for Jaw. But if he was able to eat Jaw and then he would go into the crystal, like he would never be able to come out again, right? Like, unless, again, technology continues in some way where they could break him out, right? And so I was sort of thinking about this, and I know I'm not the only one, because I remember like reading it somewhere, maybe it was my Discord server, we were sort of talking about the end game and like the sort of Eren, not statue, but like the white stuff that's in the OP, I don't know how to explain it, but like that sort of like Eren cardboard cutout, except it's the like the crystal, if that makes sense, right? Like the white stuff, I don't know, the hardening shell, yeah, the hardening shell, and you have this image of Eren. Like, I wonder if the end goal could be to basically collect all the Titan powers and then seal himself away so they could never be used again type of situation. The only thing is, like, I don't know how my theory about Falco inheriting anything would play into that. I guess it really wouldn't. Like, it wouldn't play into that at all, because if Falco got it, he would be the one in ice. But maybe, like, that would be the thing, is that Falco is the one who decides to, like, stop Titan powers once and for all, and it's not Eren that's in the ice, it's Falco goes into the crystal. But yeah, I don't know. I've also been thinking about Code Geass. I don't want to talk about it, though, because I think that Code Geass is just such an amazing show. I don't really want to spoil anyone on any aspect, but if you guys have watched Code Geass, you can probably just guess what I'm thinking, and maybe we can talk about it in the comments section. But yeah, like, I'm sort of thinking about that aspect as well. Like, and again, I'm not gonna say too much about it, but yeah, like, things happen in Code Geass, and I'm wondering if similar things could happen to certain characters in Attack on Titan, and that's how vague that I'll be. But yeah, Eren should be freed. He hasn't done anything wrong. He challenged an imposing enemy and grasps victory. Victory in the form of the rebelling, which secures our right to live, right? And so this is Floch's idea. This is basically like his, I guess, like his faction, right? Like, this is their mission, you know, like they all support Eren. There's no guarantee that the rumbling works as planned and can save us. At this point, it's no more than a myth. only because you're keeping Eren locked up, right? And so I feel like the ultimate plan, and I feel like that Hange knows this, right? And that's why they're evacuating the district, is they're not actually keeping Eren locked up at all, right? And so you see them whispering. I kind of feel like that they may coup her eventually. I feel like that Floch, or even just like these guys, I feel like that they may kill Hange, or at least take her out of power, right? If she gets like too interfery, if that makes sense, like if she interferes too much, I feel like that they could kill her, and I see bad death flags for her, especially with them whispering, because I feel like that this man is whispering like, hey buddy, like Floch has got a point, right? Like I feel like that that's what they're talking about, right? Eren will lead our country, please release him at once, right? And so you see again that sort of reflection on the glasses, like I feel like again very important and metaphorical, reminds me of her looking at the newspaper people. Yeah, you might be right about that. I feel like she's lying. That's the point of the glasses. One way or another, I made the decision to carry out Zeke's plan, right? And so I feel like that she's saying like, yeah, I guess you're right, Eren will test the rumbling. Like, I feel like that's basically what she's saying. Eren will be freed, he'll test the rumbling, but I won't tolerate your disobedience, and I won't tolerate the fact that you leaked the information, so off to jail you go. That's how I see it, because they are clearing out the district, and she says, like, oh, ask the MPs. So it's not her idea, like, it's not what she wants. She doesn't want to let Eren go. I'm assuming after talking to the MPs about the fact that he can't actually be locked in there, right, and that he could bust out whenever he wants to, and no prison can hold him. I feel like that when you think about all of those aspects and keep all that in mind, they probably had no choice but to be like, hey, if that's true, like, we gotta let him out and just try to do the rumbling. So I feel like what she's saying is like, yeah, I guess you're right, we will let him out, but like, you fuckers, I've had enough of you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're still being a little treasonous and like going against our military policy, right? And so I feel like that, like, this was fun. This is a nice scene. I mean, I kind of like Floch. A lot of people, for some reason, like, don't like him. Especially, like, I don't know, like, when he was first introduced, I was kind of like, this guy, like, I don't like this guy, he's an asshole, but I'm warming up to Floch. I kind of like him now. I like this scene with Hange here just because it's, again, reminiscing a little bit, like, looking at, like, past things that people have said to her. I think she's also thinking about Erwin, right? When one's role is done, another steps in to start the act again, right? And so I feel like that's not only referencing what Hange has experienced, but when you think about it, it's also referencing what was said earlier about, like, making the descendants go through all this, like with Historia, right? It's like after she dies, it'll be passed on, and that person has to have a bunch of kids, and then it'll be passed on, and they have to have a bunch of kids, right? Until the bloodline is secure enough and whatever. And so I feel like that is really weighing on her. The fact that they're almost all like pieces that could be substitute for a piece of the same type. Like Historia can be substituted for her child eventually. Erwin can be substituted for Hange. And so I feel like that is really weighing on her, but she's still covering up her insecurity with jokes, even though no one else is around. And so I feel like that it helps, like, us to see that in this scene, because she looks genuinely defeated here, and I feel like that this is her true feeling. And then she goes, oh, well, I'm pooped. I don't think that that's necessarily, like, I think that she's still trying to be lighthearted, even though no one else is around. Like, she's trying to be lighthearted for herself. But I feel like that this Hange that we see right here, like, that's the true Hange that she feels inside, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like that, yes, like, her personality is still that way. She's still very jokey, but I feel like that at this point, the jokes are just a mask, right? But then she says, no, there's more I need to investigate, and so she stops being pooped, basically. I like this scene because I love how everything is just connecting to each other. Like, I feel like that, like, no side character in Attack on Titan really went unutilized. Like, you have, again, the girl Sasha saves, look at her now. This girl, look at her now, right? And I think that this is really interesting. I see, that's a shame. Like, it's a shame that Mikasa's never been in the cell, but I think I understand what that means now. It just occurred to me. I think that it basically means, like, have you ever broken the rules, Mikasa? And then Mikasa's like, no. And this girl is like, well, that's a shame, because, you know, sometimes you gotta crack a couple eggs, Mikasa. Like, I guess that she may have had a different version of Mikasa in her head, like a more idealized version of her, maybe. And so now finding out that Mikasa's like a little goody two-shoes who has never been in the jail, right? Like, maybe that, like, ruins her interpretation of Mikasa a bit. That's how I personally read this scene, right? It's like, oh, like, have you ever been in a cell, Mikasa? And Mikasa's like, no, why? Like, what? Like, why would I be in a cell? And she's like, oh, that's a shame. Like, that's too bad, because you would be cooler if you were. Now, I really like this because I think something that they're really hitting on is cycles. Not even necessarily cycles of revenge like you have Erwin and Hange, right? Obviously, you have Reiner and Eren, like, that's definitely like the cycle of revenge, and then you have Eren and Gabi to some extent. But here, I think you have Mikasa and this girl, and so I find that very interesting, right? Because you see, like, obviously, this is, like, from seasons past, right? Long time ago, I realized something when you, a human, took down that Titan, that without power, you can't protect anything. I feel like I've heard that before. I don't know if it was Attack on Titan. I'm pretty sure that it probably was. It sounds very familiar. I mean, other anime have that same sort of theme too, but it's interesting to get into this girl's mindset and, like, seeing, like, I wonder, like, if you looked back at this scene, like, you could see her, like, this prominently, like, was it this obvious that she would be, like, an actual character, right? Because when you look at these guys, like, these guys look like nobodies, right? Like, these guys look like background characters, but with them, like, could you always tell if you looked back now, right? Ever since that day, I wanted to get closer to you, and then obviously she joined up, right? And so I feel like that's really interesting because, like, how Reiner created Eren, and Eren creates Gabi, Mikasa created this girl. Why did you join the scout regiment, Mikasa? If it was for Eren freeing him, and I really like that, right? Because it's like she picks up on the fact that I feel like Mikasa did really join just because it's what Eren wanted to do, right? Like, she just followed Eren's lead, and then she said, I only have one thing to say, keep your mouth shut. So it's very, like, it's funny how similar Mikasa and Eren are, though, because last episode you have that whole thing where Eren is like, shut the fuck up, Hange. If you mention Historia again, I'll cut you, right? And so with Mikasa, it's almost like the same thing, even though Mikasa's on the outside of the cell. Like, is Mikasa really on the outside of the cell, or is Mikasa in a self-imposed prison, right? And so I think that's almost interesting, is that how Eren and Mikasa, like, when you start talking about the people that they love or the people that they cherish, right? Like, they get like this, they're like, shut the fuck up. And so, like, look at her expression, I love that too, right? And then I love this, like, she still does the little salute to Mikasa, and I thought that was nice. So Mikasa starts getting these flashbacks, and I think that this is really interesting because somebody pointed out to me, like, Eren was not a normal kid. When you really think about it, Eren was never a normal kid. Like, this is not normal kid behavior, right? Like, to be this murdery, I guess, right? Like, obviously, like, Mikasa, like, defended herself and also, like, did some murdery things too. It was self-defense, right? Like, I don't blame them for killing the kidnappers. I think the kidnappers should have died. But you have to think about it. Like, when you think about it, like, Eren as a character, like, who Eren has been all this time, like, I think a lot of people are acting like Eren just suddenly changed when Eren has been deranged the entire time. A little bit, right? Like, I'm not saying, like, he's been, like, crazy or anything, but at the same time, he has always been this violent, in a sense. Like, this is not really anything new for him. I think that Eren is much more in control now than he was back then, like, in terms of his emotions and, like, how he's regulating his actions and his behaviors. But back then, like, he was just, like, wild, right? And so, I don't know, like, that's something interesting to think about, is that has Eren sort of always been this monster and Mikasa just never realized it? Like, again, obviously, kidnappers should have died. I'm not saying that, you know, like, Eren was wrong for doing that, but the amount of violence that he executes on them is definitely not normal. So I feel like that the point of this series of flashbacks is Mikasa maybe realizing that she has seen Eren through these rose-colored glasses for a very long time, and now she's seeing that he was always sort of fucked up to start with. It's not like he suddenly became fucked up, he was always a little fucked up. I feel like the other reason for these flashbacks is because it's a direct answer to the question about why Mikasa joined the Scouts Regiment. It's because I think that she sees it as she owed her life to Eren for this moment, and so it also answers that. But yeah, I think this is to illustrate like how we see Eren now. Like, was he not always a little bit like this? Like, was he's a lot like Gabi in a lot of ways, right? Like, when you think about like how many times Gabi like hits that guy over the head when once or twice would have sufficed, right? Like, not only to knock him out, like even to kill him, right? She just wails on him. I feel like Eren is almost very similar in that way, and so I feel like the amount of violence that Eren like executed, I guess, like, I don't know, like the amount of unhingedness, like Eren didn't just suddenly become unhinged. If anything, he has like put some more latches onto his mind at this point, right? Like, he's a lot more calculated than he's ever been. But at the same time, I feel like that this is going back and seeing like, oh, Mikasa, like, did you not realize like from the very start there was something a little wrong, right? And I'm not blaming Eren for that, because I think that that's the person that Reiner, in a sense, created him to be. But it's just an observation. Like, it's just me observing the fact that that is sort of where I think that we're going with this. It's like, Mikasa, when you really think about it, like, Eren hasn't changed. Like, Connie, like, said that, oh, like, Eren's changed, like, he's this whole person, he's not like the same person, that's not even remotely Eren. But I'm like, but wasn't it always kind of Eren though? I really like the bird metaphor here, just because the bird is obviously like outside of this cage, right? And then Yelena's inside of the cage, and so they talk about how like, oh, Floch, right, like, was the guard for her, and they were around Eren, and Floch leaked the information, and it's all very sketchy, but, like, good for Floch. I think that that's great. I don't really have anything else to say about this, other than the fact that I think Yelena basically helped Eren, like, start moving around on his own, and then, like, Floch and those other people also believed in Eren's cause enough. So, yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, right? But I think that this was really good as a scene, like, just a little thing to show, like, what's going on with Yelena, how she plays into Eren's decisions. I feel like that that's really interesting. Like, it just so happens around that time Eren began moving on his own, right? And so I feel like that they're basically figuring out some puzzle pieces. Now, I do wonder if this is the result of Hange saying, I need to investigate more, or if this was something that they already knew, right? Because obviously, like, Prixis is doing it, but I wonder if Hange, like, this is Hange's investigated information, or if Hange's investigated information will come into play later. So my theory about this horse is that I feel like that just based off of the level of this shot, like, I feel like maybe the horse thought that she was Sasha, right? Because Gabi and Sasha do have similarities in appearance. I think I pointed that out when they were sort of meant for death, right? Like, when Sasha was meant for death and everything. And so, I don't know. I feel like that that's why the horse bit her. And I really like this hairstyle for her. She definitely looks way more mature here. I just thought that this scene was funny, but that's really all there is to it. It's just a funny scene, right? I don't know why the horse attacked her, but again, proving that, like, Gabi's not getting away, like, with any of the horses here. See, and Gabi does mention Zeke again, and so I feel like that where this is going, again, I'm not going to talk about the rest of the dialogue, because I don't think that it meant, like, so much. Like, I do like the character interactions of, like, what's Mia? And, like, why am I your little sister? I do like this scene for their character relationship and for how they're interacting with each other, but I feel like the most important part is, again, aren't you pissed at Zeke? Like, this is the third mention of Zeke in this episode, and I feel like that Falco saying there's nothing we can do, I feel like that where we are going with this is that maybe Falco is thinking that Zeke had his reasons, and he just doesn't want to say that to Gabi. I could actually see that as being, like, the thing, right? Like, I feel like that what could be happening is that Falco actually wants to, like, hear Zeke out and see if they should side with Zeke, but Gabi's just like, oh, like, he's a traitor, right? Aren't you pissed? But maybe Falco's not pissed, because maybe Falco thinks maybe that there's a logical reason why Zeke would betray everyone, and that is how Falco defects and joins Zeke's side. I really like this conversation between them about how they're like, oh, you guys are so hardworking, and then, like, Falco's like, you think? And I'm like, yeah, being a child soldier will do that to you, I guess, right? But then, you see Gabi's facial expression here, right? Like, all of us lost our parents 4 years ago. And then they start talking crazy, or I guess I should say Gabi starts talking crazy, right? And Falco's like, sis, what the fuck, right? And so she just goes off on her and starts like talking about all of this stuff that only like the Marley Eldians would know and like Marleyans would know, right? And so I feel like she's directly parroting, like this is like very much Reiner's mom and like her aunt. Like this like seems like word for word like what she would say. So I feel like at this point she's just parroting back what she's heard before. And so I like this though because she is logical as fuck. And we see that throughout the entire episode is that she is the one with all of the logic and all of the sense, right? And so of course, even if you act like a saint, your sins are too great to escape, right? Is that what they teach you in Marley, right? Like we're in her debt, you know, right? And so they're just arguing, right? But she knew that they were from Marley all along. But again, this logical thing of breaking down her ideology with sense, with common sense is a very big thing here. And I feel like that's really, really good as we get into this like next section, right? And then Falco's like, what? And so this was like an odd change of tone though, because like she's very serious and then Falco like has this anime embarrassment with like his like arm over his head. You have to ask, you yelled it out loud. They did. They did do it. Right. And so this is more of like a comedy face, but then Gabi's over here and I feel like this was intentional, right? This is like funny and then Gabi's over here like ready to murder her in cold blood. And so I thought that was a weird sort of like tone thing, but I feel like it was supposed to be that on purpose because it's like, hey, this could be a lighthearted, cheeky scene, except Gabi still murders. Like Gabi still tries to murder out here. I'm glad she didn't, obviously. Look at, like, she's just not fazed by this at all. I don't know if it was just because her eyes were closed in that moment or whatever. Like, I don't know if I just missed her facial expression, but I thought that, you know, it's just kind of funny, that screenshot to see Falco go like this and she's just like, sigh, very big sigh. Like, even though this girl's about to murder me, very big sigh. And so Gabi thinks that they were only nice to them to trap them. I think that that's the idea, and then they like see what's going on, and they pull out a very good cover story, or at least she does, right? Like she's just like, Mia's jealous and thinks I'm stealing her brother. Like that was good, but I think it's interesting that she covered for them, and we get a really nice conversation because of that. Before we start on with the next scene here, I do want to point this out because I think that what they are basically trying to tell us is that Kaya may have been very like irritable and depressed and very closed off just because of what happened to Sasha. Obviously, like, Sasha died, right? So she was grieving, right? So I feel like that what they're saying is Kaya's actually getting along with people, like maybe she's been, you know, closed off and maybe even like rude and irritable, like how people are when they're grieving, right? Like they're very depressed, and so maybe she hasn't been like the most friendly or the most cheerful, but now she is, right? She's cheered up some. So I feel like, again, that's a reference to the grief that she experienced after Sasha died. I really like this scene with her explaining what happened to her mom, just because on one hand, for us, right, like it's good for us to sort of remember, but I like how she, like, I guess told the story. I don't know, I guess that's a weird thing to say, but I just really like this scene, and I feel like that it's weird in a way because this town is so overgrown and it's almost so peaceful despite holding so many somber memories, right? And so it's just sort of weird, like it's in a weird like in-between space somehow. But yeah, I really like her dialogue here. I like how she confronts like Falco and Gabi about like, hey, like, why are we hated so much? She's not even necessarily, like, she does get angry when Gabi starts spouting bullshit, but she's just almost curious, like, why? Like, I don't even understand. Like, they don't even have the concept, right? We talked about this last episode, like, what is a nation, right? They don't even understand that. So I feel like it's a genuine place of curiosity until Gabi starts to get her riled up, right? Your kind slaughtered people for thousands of years, right? And so then she says, thousands, don't tell me you forgot it, right? And so she explains like their version of history, right? Again, like, I think that there's a big thing of like, oh, well, what history or what version of history do you want to believe? Because obviously, like, there's like the Marleyan history of, oh, like, like they used to do like X, Y, and Z, but then there's the Eldian like restorationalist history as well. And so it's like, which of the history is true? Like, is it just the one that people want to believe in? Will we ever truly know what happened? Like, there's that thing. Somebody made a point about that somewhere, and I thought that that was a really good point. But see, I like her response. My mom was born and raised here. She never did anything like that, right? And so Gabi's like, oh, fuck, I guess 1,000 years ago is too far. Let's try a century ago, right? And so she's like trying to get it closer. A century ago, the sins of your ancestors were great and terrible. A century ago, what about the people who live now? How have we sinned, right? And so she is basically like breaking down Gabi's ideology with just like some cold hard facts and common sense again, right? Like how does that apply? Like, why are we being punished? Like, we didn't do any of that. And so like she's trying to like pull it out of her, right? And I feel like that this is such a good scene because it's making her like do some self-reflection and realize that what she is thinking is really, really wrong. Like, what Gabi is thinking is inherently flawed. It's an inherently flawed ideology. You know, this idea that they're using to brainwash them on purpose, like for the purpose of control, even if it doesn't make any logical sense, I guess. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, right? Not long ago, you guys trampled my home. So she's talking about what Aaron did now, I think, right? And so she's saying, my mom was killed 4 years ago, so it's not her fault, right? And so you see that now she's starting to get upset. I'm telling you, your ancestors, so she goes back to the old argument, right? And so then she says, my mom didn't kill anyone. Like, get this through your head, Gabi. Like, what did my innocent mom do, right? Because here's the thing, right? Gabi, in her ideology, there is no room for exceptions. There's no room for, like, nuance, I guess, in a way. Like, for Gabi, it's like, no, everyone inside the wall, they're bad, they're sinners, they're this, they're that. And so Gabi cannot just admit, well, if your mom didn't kill anyone, I guess your mom is the exception because that allows for other exceptions. And when you start to allow for other exceptions, you start to realize that, you know, your ideas do not work, like your ideas do not hold up, right? If you're saying, oh, like 99% or 100% of Eldians within the wall are bad, and then like she says, well, my mom didn't kill anyone, then it's 99. And then you have other characters like my sister didn't kill anyone, my brother didn't kill anyone, and then it gets lower and lower and lower, and then you realize that all of these assumptions or all of these things that you are attributing to this group, like it can't necessarily be true, right? Like it can't be true if there are this many exceptions. If there are this many exceptions, it's not a rule in the first place, right? And so that's how I sort of see it. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, right? But she's trying to break it down because Gabi, in like what she's thinking, there can be no exceptions. There are no good Eldians, or else the whole thing falls apart. The whole house of cards, the whole little Jenga wall. It's like when you start removing bricks, right? Like if you have that little like wooden Jenga thing where you put the wooden pieces on top of each other, you start to pull one. Okay, well maybe your mom was good, right? You pull one, you pull the other, and it all comes down. That is how I see Gabi's ideology. Her ideology and her ideas only function if everyone is bad. And the minute that you start to accept that not everyone is bad, right, that her mom wasn't bad, when you really think about it, right, it all starts to crumble. And I think that Gabi is going to have that crumble soon. Even if she doesn't necessarily admit it now, I think that this is the turning point. There has to be a reason. It's crazy if there's not. And there's not. And it is crazy. And I feel like that Falco hits on that later, right? Like, yeah, Gabi, you're talking crazy, right? It is crazy. Like, it is crazy. Because there was no reason. There was no reason. And so I feel like that with her, she's not even, like, asking, you know what I mean? Like, she's not even asking out of, like, trying to force Gabi to change her mind per se. She's asking out of like a genuine like want for an answer. Like I feel like that a lot of the times when like people die, we want an answer because an answer at least will make us feel better, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like that sort of like resolution, right? And so it's not even like she's asking these questions to necessarily make Gabi change her mind, even though I think like as like the writer put those questions in there so Gabi would start to see like the flaw flaws and like the frailness of her own way of thinking, right? But I'm saying, like, as for this character, I don't think that she even necessarily like wanted to challenge Gabi. She wants a genuine reason to have closure. That's how I sort of see it. So I like what Falco says here. The invasion of Paradis 4 years ago was staging for a larger attack. You and your mother were caught up in it. Your mom didn't do anything wrong, right? And so Falco can at least admit the truth, is that her mom didn't do anything wrong, and it's not just her mom. Like, all the innocent people inside of the wall, they didn't do anything wrong. And even like in Marley, when you think about it, like the innocent people in the crowd, right, that Aaron killed, they didn't do anything wrong either. And so I feel like that it's like, that's interesting. Like, when you think about it, like, what did Udo do? Like, what did Sophia do? Like, they didn't do anything to deserve Aaron killing them. They were there. They were caught up in it, right? And so I feel like that Falco apologizing and admitting, right, like, your mom didn't do anything wrong, like, not all of you are bad people, like, actually, most of the people inside of the wall are probably good. Like, I feel like that that's a big thing, right? That this scene is her sitting with that for a minute, because now she has that closure and that resolution. She finally understands, right? And Gabi's like, you're leaking secrets to the enemy, and why apologize, right? And so I feel like that even though I feel like something's changed here, especially with her facial expression, she's not entirely converted yet to Falco's side. She still doesn't necessarily agree with what Falco is saying, but I feel like she'll get there. I do see redemption for Gabi, but it's weird for you to apologize for Marley. You were just born there, right? And so again, I feel like that's actually a good thing for Kaya's character, or Kaya's character. Like, I feel like that's actually like interesting, right? Because she's almost putting an end to the cycle of revenge, right? Because with Aaron, to some extent, obviously there's a lot of political stuff, but the way we can really simplify it is that Reiner did something to Aaron, and Aaron goes back and does something like to the people that are in Marley, right? Like, Aaron's mom was eaten by a Titan. Now Aaron is going around eating other people's moms and dads, right? When you really think about it, in a sense, right? That's very, very simplified, obviously. But I feel like that she's almost breaking the cycle. Instead of taking revenge back at them for something that, they didn't necessarily do, she's just saying, it's weird for you to apologize. It's not your fault. And so it's almost like both sides here have come to a conclusion where, hey, Falco says he's sorry, but it's not their fault. And then Falco says that the mom didn't do anything wrong. You guys know what I mean? So the mom didn't do anything wrong. It's not her fault, but Falco didn't do anything wrong, so it's not his fault. So really, it's nobody's fault. And so I really, really like that they put an end to that little cycle right here. I like how they explain the Sasha thing, and I like how Falco's like, whoa, that's crazy, like, that girl sounds like a badass, right? And obviously it's Sasha, and they killed her, right? And so I feel like that it was nice, though, to see, like, them talk about that scene, and I think that this was, like, the hard-hitting point. This was beautiful. Again, by the way, I'm beating the beauty out of this episode. Like, I'm talking about it to death, right? If she was alive, she wouldn't abandon people like you with nowhere to go, right? Obviously referring to Sasha. And the irony is that, like, Gabi's the one that killed Sasha, just like she didn't abandon me. And so I feel like that next episode, there's probably gonna be that big boom that I talked about, right? Like, we were invited to a restaurant a Marleyan is working at. If you come along, you might find a way to go back home. But again, I think that if they tell Niccolo that they're Marleyans, I guess, or they're Eldian Marleyans, you guys understand what I mean when I keep saying that, right? They're from Marley, they're not from here, they're not from Paradis. It's getting a little confusing for me. I think I've had to clarify that like a couple times now, but you guys understand, right? Like, they tell Niccolo, and Niccolo's like, oh, you're the cadet that killed my girlfriend. Like, I feel that's not gonna go very well, right? And so I'm interested to see that. Like, will Niccolo break the cycle, or will he be a part of the cycle, or will she, being like somebody who is a part of breaking the cycle, will Kaya actually stop Niccolo and forgive Gabi? Like, I feel like that's an interesting thing to ponder. I want to become a person like her. Again, talking about Sasha, I thought that was really nice. I think that was really, really good. And now we're back in Marley, and you can kind of see, like, yeah, that was the spike that Aaron was in. This was this, that was that was of the building, right? And they're still helping to, I guess, evacuate people, or I guess, what do you call it when you dig them out of the rubble and stuff? Like, they're still trying to save people and see if anybody's alive under here, but like, I can't even imagine like the rescue mission that this must be. Like, that's just insane. Investigating the Beast Titan's corpse, we found pieces of Zeke blown apart. However, not enough of them. We only found his arms and legs. Obviously, right? They can just like pop, right? So that's not enough evidence. Then you have, he pretended that he was dead in order to deceive us. We believe Zeke has sided with Paradis and escaped on the airship. And so then they talk about the gear and stuff, like it's modified and uses Marleyan technology, so a Marleyan had to give them that to upgrade the Omni gear. There's the airship, right? Zeke probably sneaked comrades aboard the scout fleet 4 years ago. Eldian restorationalist, that is, right? I don't know if Porco is being serious or not. I kind of wonder if all of them are going to side with Zeke, because at this point, like, I feel like that Colt had that whole conversation about like, oh, like, you'll know my secret someday, Colt. Like, Zeke was saying that, right? And so I feel like that could be a thing. Obviously, we won't let him off the hook. And then they talk about, like, in 6 months, they'll go get him, right? But then Colt says 6 months. We're waiting 6 months to rescue Gabi and Falco. They're the most talented warrior cadets. They're the only warrior cadets. Hello. So there's that, right? And so even, like, Pieck starts to convince them, right? And training new warrior cadets will take ages, right? And so they talk about, like, hey, if Marley attacks alone, we'll only be driven back like the last time. We must wait for the global alliance. Zeke is hoping we will. He thinks Marley won't attack after taking such heavy damage. If we wait a year and a half to get there, he'll have made plans to fight back, right? And so that's their argument, is like, hey, Zeke will probably think that we're not going to attack, but what if we attack now, right? And so it's like that scene, oh god, what's it from? It's the poison in the cup, but do you have the poison? Like, did you put the poison in your cup because you thought that I would think that you would put the poison in your cup, right? So it's one of those things, right? Like, what if Zeke does think? But no, but Zeke couldn't have thought. I mean, Zeke could adjust his plans now, I guess, but Gabi and Falco weren't a part of the original plan. So I feel like that Zeke did originally plan for them to do the global alliance, right? Nobody planned, like, Gabi and Falco getting kidnapped and them coming to get them, right? Like, maybe Zeke would think about that now, but, like, that wasn't part of the original plan. So I feel like to some extent, like, Reiner and them are right. Now, here's what I'm saying, okay? Do you guys remember that scene where Zeke was, like, not in this room, right? And that was the first thing to him being kind of sketchy. At least, like, one of the things. There was also the baseball glove or the baseball and stuff, right? There was just a lot of things pointing to Zeke turning, I guess, against them. But what I'm thinking is that he said that not in this room thing in front of all of them. I'm pretty sure that Porco was there too, and so what I'm wondering is I wonder if they're all deciding this because they actually do want to go help Zeke. I don't know about Porco. I don't know if he's putting on a front, like, he seems pretty genuine. Oh, like that traitor, but let's look at his exact wording, right? Let's go back a little bit, because I just want to see, to think we fought side by side with a traitor this whole time, I don't know. It seems pretty clear cut to me. I don't know if there's a hidden meaning in any of that, right? But I wonder, like, if this is just fake and they are all going to, like, change sides, right? And so basically what they're doing is they're just convincing to go earlier so they can go help Zeke earlier, right? And even this guy, like, I don't know about you, buddy, but I feel like he has a good chance to also defect as well. I was thinking about that, right? And so let's just keep going through what we already saw, right? We have to launch a surprise attack at once, and then you see Colt's face, right? Like, everyone's face right there. And so I feel like that, I don't know, I feel like that Reiner could join Zeke. Like, my whole thing was that Reiner and Falco would join Zeke. And so I feel like that, like, what if Reiner's pushing for this because he wants to join Zeke? Because he had so many regrets about everything that he did, right? Like, to some extent. And so I feel like that Reiner could basically be trying to push them so he can get there and join with Zeke. And whether or not, like, Porco and Pieck will do that as well, like, I don't know. Obviously, Colt doesn't have any powers, right? Colt was supposed to get Zeke's powers. And so I don't know about him, but I feel like that, like, Reiner is in a position where he could change. And so here's the other thing that I'm thinking about is Annie. If she heard, like, what Armin was saying, like, I don't know if she could hear or not, but if she could, like, could it be possible that what we get is a like, oh, Annie actually switches sides and decides to fight like with Aaron and them, because that would be a turn of events. But at the same time, like, I don't know how loyal Annie ever was. Like, I feel like that Reiner used to have as a kid the same ideology that Gabi has now, but I feel like that Reiner has definitely gone out of that. Whereas with Porco and Pieck, like, I don't know exactly like their whole thing. Like, I don't know if they genuinely like want to fight for Marley or whatever, but I could see like Reiner defecting and then Annie being like, yeah, I never liked those, I never liked those Marleyans in the first place, right? She was just waiting for the opportunity to change sides. Like, maybe she doesn't care. So I feel like that at the end of this, like, I don't know. I don't really know. Like, I'm still wondering, because I feel like that you need a certain amount of Titans on the Marleyan side in order to put up a fight. But what if that's not actually what the season becomes to be about, if that makes sense, right? Like, theoretically, the reason why people talk about, like, the Titan stuff, right? Like, oh, like, we need Reiner on this side, and then, like, you have, like, the Cart Titan, and then you have the Jaw Titan, right? So it's 3 against Aaron, but Aaron has all these powers. Like, what if, like, the end goal isn't even going to be necessarily, like, them against, like, Paradis? Like, what if it's gonna turn into, like, a them against Aaron thing, or more of an internal thing, and so everyone can defect and join Eldia, but then the problem becomes Aaron himself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just really like, about this whole like, oh, well, they need Reiner can't defect or else like the teams will be unbalanced, right? Because then you have Armin and possibly maybe Annie, I don't know, maybe Annie will rejoin them. I feel like Annie actually rejoining Reiner and Porco and Gillard and stuff would actually balance things out more. But you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, we all think about like, oh, well, what would be good in a fight? Like, how can they, get through in a fight? But at the same time, like, what if that's not the fight that the show's gonna be about anymore? But yeah, as we wrap up here, who should one hate? What should one blame? And so I feel like that's going to be a reference to like the stuff with Sasha and possibly Niccolo and a bunch of stuff. They seem to have a shocked expression for whatever reason. I think it's because they are going to let Aaron out and maybe they're really like, what? Like, how could you do that? We're going to do the rumpling? What? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that there's definitely something going on with that I'm interested in. Obviously, they're all down here talking to Aaron, right? So I think that's Prixus. I think that's Hange. That doesn't look like Hange's hair, actually. But yeah, I think that's Prixus, at least, because he's bald. Otherwise, I'm not really sure, but I think that they are going to let Aaron out. By now, one should have been used to the shifting of truth, right? And so I feel like that's definitely, like, you see them talking to each other, and Yelena's actually outside. So there's a lot of interesting things to think about, like, for next episode. I think the most interesting is going to be the Niccolo thing. Also, whatever's exploding and happening over here is going to be fun. I feel like we do need to check back in with Zeke and those poisoned guys. That would probably be good. But otherwise, guys, I think we've talked about everything, all my theories and stuff. And I will basically see you guys in the next one. I hope that you guys enjoyed our midnight... God, why am I like this? Our midnight discussion. Obviously, like, it's not going to be midnight for you guys unless it is when you're watching it, but it was midnight for me recording because I'm crazy. And if you guys want to know why I'm recording at midnight, you should follow me on Twitter. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!